11, I could barely pull my eyes away from the taxi window. Despite the deepening darkness, I kept staring at everything that slowly disappeared behind us as the taxi carried us farther and farther from Malibu. Sunset seemed to have swept us out of the village as well. Perhaps Naka had acted as though it was the only thing that had kept us there. Beyond the hills of Malibu, past the pride of Bucota, stretched the outline of a world I had never seen before. Of course, I had heard stories about the city. Cootie had told me many of them. Perhaps it was because his family had once lived there before moving to our village 4 years earlier. Now, as I watched the road unfolding before me, I carried memories of him describing city life, especially the food he claimed was unlike anything I could imagine. "I doubt you'll ever taste ice cream," he had bragged one evening as we sat behind his house. "Please tell me what it tastes like," I had asked, my eyes fixed on him, almost pleading, but he refused. "Not today, little girl, perhaps you'll have to grow up and taste it yourself." Then he paused before adding, "My father once told me that the good things you miss in childhood become the greatest debts life leaves for you to pay yourself when you grow up." "Cootie, have you washed the utensils?" The voice had interrupted us from somewhere near the front of the house. The memory faded, I returned to the present. Now it all seemed impossible to connect with everything that had happened. Once it had all been a game, childish tricks, friendly rivalries, laughter. Then came the arguments, the tears, and most terrifying of all, the murder. I stared through the taxi window again, this time focusing on the shadows of taller buildings beginning to rise along the roadside. The sight pulled me into deeper questions. If father's death had truly been murder, why had Cootie immediately said it was all his fault if he had nothing to do with it? Did that mean his actions had somehow contributed to what happened? And if his family had left the village so suddenly, was there something they had been trying to hide? Yet Mr. Keyasu's arrest complicated everything. Perhaps there were still pieces of the story I did not understand. Perhaps father's burial had not buried the mystery at all. That was when I realized there were still questions waiting to be answered. "Namu, come, this is where we get off." Naka's voice pulled me back to reality. The taxi had already stopped. The conductor climbed back inside after unloading our bags, slammed the door shut, and moments later the vehicle disappeared into the night. I looked around. The city was different from the picture Cootie had painted for me. Not entirely different, just different enough. To my left, buildings rose above one another, stretching endlessly into the distance. Electric lights flooded the streets so brightly that night seemed locked in a competition with day. People moved everywhere, some hurried, some ran, others walked with purpose. And those who staggered or delayed received immediate criticism. "Watch where you're going, move, get out of my way," voices flew through the streets from every direction. Even harder to ignore was the music pouring from nearby shops. Different songs fought one another through loudspeakers, each demanding attention from the crowd. Everyone seemed determined to be noticed, everyone except me. I simply stood there in amazement. "Namu, hold my hand." Naka's voice cut through the noise. She took one of the bags from me. "Stay close, we're crossing." I looked at the road. Vehicles streamed past continuously. The thought of crossing while they were still moving terrified me, yet I trusted Naka, and so I followed. Perhaps she had already taken responsibility for my life from the moment she decided to bring me here. Together we crossed the busy road. Soon we entered a narrow corridor that smelled of dampness and refuse, then another street, then a quieter one. Finally we stopped in front of a row of rental houses. I looked around. Most of the neighboring doors were already closed. "Come in," Naka said as she unlocked one of the doors. "And don't leave your shoes outside." She pushed the door open and carried the bags inside. Curiosity immediately pulled me forward. The apartment was small but neatly furnished. Comfortable, orderly, yet far too small to compare with father's house back in the village. Still, I thought she deserved it. After all, she had built this life for herself. I lowered myself onto a modest sofa and looked around. Only then did I realize something. We were alone. "So," Naka said, opening the refrigerator and pulling out a couple of bottled drinks, "this is my place." She handed one bottle to me. "And for now, you'll be staying here with me?" I nodded, yet something already felt strange, not frightening, just strange. There seemed to be far more things inside the apartment than I expected for someone living alone. There was the large bed positioned against one wall. A carefully arranged sideboard stood nearby. Everything looked comfortable. Almost too comfortable. Not quite what I imagined for a person living by herself. Perhaps my thoughts were becoming far too mature for someone my age. "Hey," Naka said suddenly, placing her bottle on the table. "I'm going out for a little while. I'll get us something to eat." She reached for a remote control lying beside me. Only then did I notice it. The television flickered to life. A news bulletin was already in progress. Naka turned toward the door, then she stopped. The expression on her face changed. The seriousness in her eyes instantly erased any thought that she was merely making conversation. Her next words sounded less like advice and more like an order. "Don't open the door for anyone." She waited until I was looking directly at her. "Unless you hear 3 knocks first," her hand remained on the doorknob, "and unless the person calls your name afterward." For a moment neither of us spoke. Then Naka opened the door and stepped outside. The door closed behind her. And suddenly the apartment felt much larger than before.